But I understand now we have the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum and governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us for this conversation. Well, that meeting has held, drew all the leaders, governors, traditional rulers, ministers, and some representatives of the president to that meeting. From where you sit as chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum, how successful and promising would you see that meeting?
Well, as I said, let me thank you again for having me on this program. The meeting was undoubtedly very successful. We had the target audience who were there, and mainly the Obas. We wanted to discuss with our traditional rulers and leaders. So we had that wonderful audience who were there, and the discussion was free and honest. So, and that led to a communique which we gave to the press at the end of the stakeholders meeting. So it was a wonderful meeting to address salient issues, and I want to believe that our Obas, all of them, I think each and every one of them spoke very, very honestly and brilliantly, and this formed the communique which you had.
Just before we address some of the issues in that communique, I'd like to refer to some issues that came up before that meeting, especially right after we had northern governors meet with ministers from the region, the chief of staff to the president, the IGP, and there were a lot of criticism. People saying, I mean, why should that meeting happen? In fact, even the communique that was released after the meeting was to some extent criticized and thinking it shouldn't just be for this region. And now that this meeting has happened with the Southwest governors, ministers from the region, almost a similar representation as what we had with the northern governors, people were thinking, okay, wait a minute, is this something that was in the works already, talking about the meeting, or it was an afterthought after there were lots of criticism and then leaders in the Southwest thought, well, maybe we should have our own. So what exactly played out?
No, what you must know what informed it. Now, after the northern governors, you will remember that the team had been to the southeast. So it's something that already mapped out from the onset that the team representing the federal government, led by the chief of staff, was to have consultation with governors of each zone, with the Obas from each zone. So we cannot bring all the Obas from the whole southwest there. So we had to have chairman of council of traditional rulers and one other Oba, and all ministers from the same zone. So it's something that it's been in the, what I would call the planning. I've been there for long. It's not something that it just came up with suddenly. So before Southwest, they were in the Southeast. So I don't see anything wrong in it, but people will criticize anything anyway, and you should expect it. Nobody's ever satisfied, and nothing is ever good. Nothing. This is a public thing, so people are bound to criticize it, and one should not be deterred for as long as you believe that you have a good purpose and you are pursuing it with everything you have.
Well, speaking of criticism, in fact, that has followed some of the items on that communique, which was co-signed by you. And we were discussing that much earlier. I mean, you began by thanking the government, especially the president, for the way the NSAS protest was handled, expressing appreciation to the responsiveness of the government to the initial demands of the demonstrators and for his firm handling of the aftermath of the protest. And I'd like to know, what are those specific areas that you say the government handled this firmly, both during the protests and in the aftermath especially?
No, we don't go to what happened during the protest or the aftermath. Let's start from the very beginning. What was the protest about? The protest was to end SARS. And they had 5-point demands. Did the government meet these demands? And the answer is yes. You want SARS to end? The government almost immediately. Let's time frame. We might not be too exact, but government within a reasonable time and almost immediately, not up to a week, said that look, SARS as a body is now disbanded. They were totally disbanded, so SARS ended. That means Special Anti-Robbery Squad ended. That was clear. Two, they went ahead. There were demands on issue of salary for the police. And the government said, look, okay, we have sent in our proposal for the budget proposal has gone in, but we will look into this. There is no way the salaries of the police and co will remain what it is, and we'll do it. They asked for the release of those who are under NSAS custody. They were released. They also went ahead, part of their demand, that, okay, there must be, they did not specifically say they wanted a tribunal or anything, but that the activities of SARS prior to now be investigated and officers who are found guilty be dealt with. And almost immediately at the National Executive Council meeting, the government took a decision and said all state governors should set up a commission of inquiry, a judicial commission of inquiry. Membership was stated, and the terms of reference of the commissions of inquiry were spelled out. And all of us, and virtually all governors went ahead, set this thing up to satisfy all the demands for NSAS. So that's why I said, look, let's look at give every the milestones achieved when the NSAS protest was going on. And I believe that was done. The other thing the entire protesters wanted or they asked for, that there's no doubt that the government will have looked into it again. So that was why we said, okay, for the efforts at least ensuring that those 5-point demands were met, we needed to appreciate the government, not only the federal government, all the state governments too, for what they did. But what took place after the incident in Lagos, that is a different thing that we can consider and discuss on as we go along. But coming to the response of the federal government and state government to this NSAS demand, that's why we said we thank the government for what it did.
Well, while that, that you have said are valid and everyone, a good number of people might agree with that one, there is also that court order that seems to be demeaning the earlier good, as you have said, that the government has done. That's that central bank order, an order of the Federal High Court in Abuja to the central bank to freeze the accounts of some NSAS protesters. So, juxtaposing that with what you said earlier, people are wondering, how do they two correlate? On the one hand, you're calling them to a table. On the other hand, you're freezing their accounts. How do you respond to that?
No, my response to that is this. The question you put earlier was, why did we have to appreciate the government? And you will note from the communique, the issue of the account that were frozen was discussed. But you see that in the communique, we never said we appreciated the federal government for freezing the account. No, the matter is sub judice, and we know that there are ways we can get a few things done without putting in the public glare, and they say that start contestation on it on the page of newspaper. So we know what we decided, and we know what we want to do about that. But when the issue, when I can tell you when it was raised, it generated some debates here and there. Nobody is freezing the account. Nobody should freeze, for instance, the accounts of those young people who did it. But it was so clear that probably some people were getting to fund this for reasons other than NSAS. So if we know money went from some accounts that are suspicious, then do you say the government should just keep quiet? If you know that money went from accounts that people believe that, look, this is not, in essence, this I mean, could not have been issue of NSAS. It was more or less, can anybody be putting our money to fund hoodlums, to destroy things, and you think the government should fold its hands? No. So these are things that we have to look at and probably separate at some other time before you know, okay, this is for a right purpose, this was meant for a wrong purpose, and that's why this was we're taking. So it's something we are looking into.
Well, it's interesting, Your Excellency, because, I mean, you would agree, as so many people have said, that the good intentions of the protesters were hijacked by, people who are hoodlums themselves and have perpetrated a lot of damage all over the place. Some of the people whose accounts have been frozen were invited to sit at judicial panels of inquiry in Lagos, for instance. That happened, and because of that, panel of inquiry sitting has been suspended because these two people are wondering, how could you call us to a table to have these conversations for justice, and then you freeze our accounts at the same time without any prior notice to them? It was ex parte. I mean, some people will also find that suspect, wouldn't you say?
No, but as I said to you, if I were to be lawyers, if I were to be counsel to those people, I would not advise them not to appear for the panel. Accounts are frozen. Is that the first time it's done? So would they have other purpose to which you want to put the account almost immediately? If your account is frozen, you justify why the money was there. You come and explain to what use you have put this money. If it's that, okay, we paid this caterer to give food to these boys when they were there. We spent money between then, before the hoodlums took over. It will be explained, people will know, and the account will be defrozen. So why will anybody now? If it is not accounts that are frozen, it's not that there's a conclusion that account was used for nefarious or act of treason. No. It's just that, okay, we suspended this account, then the owner of the account will explain. And you can always explain, and the account will be defrozen. That's what I believe. So I don't see anything, I mean, speaking very honestly, I don't see anything wrong in it. If, for instance, my account was frozen, what will I do? All I will do is go back to court to explain. I can't, I mean, even politicians, if your accounts at times are frozen, you have to go to court and explain. And at the end of the day, the court will say, look, leave the account. The account should be defrozen and you take your money back. So I don't see any problem in it. It's not that because you are in the tribunal, you wait on the tribunal finishes before your account is frozen. So if you are in the tribunal, you spend all the money. What happens? What happens? If the money was actually there, or it was sent there illegitimately for an illegitimate purpose, you will have been allowed to just spend the money before the panel concludes its sitting.
Well,
so what stops it?
Don't forget that some of the protesters also could not travel as a result of what they call the seizure of their passports. Some of them have been arrested under questionable circumstances. But we know that there are 13 points on that communique. So if we could just take them, I mean, one after the other. But during that meeting that you had, did you also discuss allegations that were going around saying that some people in government or some politicians actually sponsored some of these hoodlums to perpetrate the violence that we see across states just to make the protesters look bad? Was that also tabled?
No, you have said you go look at those starting point agenda. I think that's what matters. That is the conclusions we reach. How we arrive at that probably is not for this debate, because I would rather at the end of the day be giving my own opinion. But we'll stand by the agenda that was issued out. 13 points. Simple. Whether politicians were the one that was sponsoring hoodlums and co was not an issue. But it was not an issue about politicians. it could be all discussion was that if there were people who probably wanted to take advantage of that protest, and that's why hoodlums hijacked it, and that those hoodlums were probably being sponsored. I mean, if in my own case, when I said my campaign office was burnt, so it could be that it was by opposition politicians because we had just concluded an election, wanted to have their own back. It could be. It might not be. It could be just a chance. It could be just one chance. Somebody was just going driving by and say, let us do this, others will follow. Mob actions, nobody can predict. So the police have to carry out total and very, what I would call comprehensive investigation to arrive at any conclusion. So I don't think we ever arrive at the conclusion that politicians or a specific person was one that sponsored the hoodlums to hijack that protest. All we are sure, and all of us agree at that meeting, was that the protest at the beginning was peaceful, and we have policemen even guiding the protesters. We had some areas where soldiers were on the street with the protesters. Everybody felt, yes, good protest, peaceful. But at the end of the day, it was hijacked by hoodlums. So what else we do? How they came about is still subject of investigation. How the hoodlums came to hijack it is still something that the panel will look into and reach conclusion.
Which is why a lot of people were asking, where were the security agents? But we're due for our break now. So when we return, we'll discuss that security component, because I understand it was a third point on the communique that was released right after that meeting. Please join us again. You're welcome back. Well, Governor Akeredolu, the third point on that communique concerns security, and what you basically asked for was rejigging of the security architecture and more police presence in communities in the southwest region. And that's it right there for our viewers to see. But first, regarding the rejigging, or in fact, the term used was adjustment to the security architecture. Are you calling for state police? Is that the call?
Well, the issue came up at the meeting, it's part of the contributions. But we were convinced that, look, something has to be done. And all of us, and it's not only in Southwest, I believe that across the country, maybe a few people or a few areas don't believe in it. But some of us believe that, look, our security architecture must now be, there must be rejigging of our security architecture. And one of the things we believe that can come out of it is the issue of state police, right? But it's not that was the conclusion of that meeting. But when suggestions came here and there, and those suggestions are, we decided to put them together, aggregate those suggestions. We are convinced that, look, okay, the best thing is, look, the way our security architecture as it exists now, there must be a surgical operation to it. And that, for instance, will need maybe a high-level committee that will include people from the House, from governors and co, put together. All of us come with what we believe that a very comprehensive suggestion. And that, at the end of the day, might include state police. So I'm not imposing my own idea. I'm one of those, I'm a supporter of state police. I've always said so, open and anywhere. Or put it rightly, we believe that, look, there must be multi-level policing in this country. Yes, we have gone ahead from the federal setup. We are trying to go to community policing. That's another level of policing. But there must be a level of policing at state. So that is where we are talking about. So we look at, yes, federal government has agreed, okay, we have community policing. But if we have community policing, so how many local governments do we have in the country? Will they also come and be under one command, and the command will be controlling the community policing or community police? No. So something has to be done. It's fundamental. So, but as I've answered the question, issues were discussed about the way our security is set up now, and all of us believe that, look, it needs some overhaul, and there must be some changes. And all of us will have to agree one day.
So the process usually is that this will be escalated to the National Assembly for maybe some tweaks in the laws of the land. And a huge component of that is the buy-in of lawmakers in the region. So I don't know if this was part of the discussions, but just how much of a buy-in, how much of an interaction are you having with representatives of the region, such that when these issues get to the National Assembly, I mean, it should get adequate support such that your views and some of these resolutions are well represented and probably achieve some level of fruition?
Well, this is one of so many engagements that we are supposed to have. We are taking what we have here, and we're taking it back to engagements with the youth. We are going to engage with NGOs. We are going to engage with student union leaders. We are going to engage with members of our House of our legislators, and so on and so forth in our respective states. Before the NEC committee, of which I'm one of the member, will now go around the regions to collect all these ideas. So we are supposed to be working now. This is just one of the engagements, but there are so many other engagements. So our resolution here it will still have to go through a lot of processes, so that at the end of the day, we'll come out and finally sit down, all of us, to look at what we came out from various regions, submit to the NEC committee that is supposed to look at this, and all of us will come out with something, a better idea. It's still going to pass through the furnace, and I believe that we're going to get something solid when we come out.
Well, Your Excellency, the meeting also released information on social media. You recognize the damaging and negative impact of fake news and worry about its destructive and dangerous potential. But item 12 of your communique says that the federal government should ensure that technology is used effectively for the advancement of the Nigerian security and not its destruction, by working with the technology cum social media platforms. Well, you know that the federal government had been talking about censoring social media on the one hand. So we want to understand just what the Southwest leaders have decided about the social media precisely, because it would seem like item 12 and item 11 are not particularly on the same page.
Well, those items you referred to, what we have decided is not that anybody wants to gag. We never took the decision that social media be gagged. No. But we're all clear as to the effect of fake news and false news. And there's no government that will sit back and allow such news items to go without a way of curbing it or restricting it. So at the end of the day, I will realize what it did in this NSAS or the aftermath of NSAS, because I don't believe NSAS ended before the hoodlums took over. When the hoodlums took over, a lot of fake news were fed to the public. People were reacting to it. False news were fed to the public. They reacted to it. Led to destruction of properties, Lagos, Akure, everywhere. So no responsible government will just sit back. And what the communique is saying, that look, we must look into it. There must be gatekeepers. Yes, you want to publish any news you like, but there must be gatekeepers using technology that will be able to at least go on as you are trying to send out this your fake news, that can sieve what is right and what is wrong. You can say it will be subjective, fair enough, because we cannot, the government will not allow everybody to just throw in whatever it likes. So we have the gates can be kept and maintained through technology, so that fake and false news are not allowed to go out. That is what we are saying we will exploit. If you have to get to Facebook to get some of them, there are areas in some countries in which they must have managers. And if any fake news come out, they will be responsible themselves. Facebook will be responsible. You can have such band that will restrict what comes out, not because they won't restrict my personal conversation, they won't restrict what I'm saying to my friends. But if I want to take out news and say that thousands have been or hundreds have been killed in Lekki, Toge, for instance, then before it comes out, I must have evidence of people who died on the ground. Show me. And if it's not there, I will say to you, you cannot use my band to propagate such a news item. That's what we are saying. So there must be a way in which people, a technology, I know the technology exists. They're using it everywhere, using it in Russia, using it in China. We are not saying we should go there route, but they're using it even every other place. So nobody, if we cannot be disciplined enough to be able to know that we don't churn out news that can cause a lot of damage in the society, then the government itself must be proactive enough to find a way at least to control it. That's what we are saying.
You know, some are always quick to also say, while that is being done, what about statements made by political actors during campaigning, divisive statements and whatnot? I recall we had a conversation with you and you called them political gunshots. So in the same vein, do you think that should be, applied to all those statements made by political actors, politicians, during, before, or after elections, all those statements? Do you think that should be applied to?
Thank you for that. Luckily, you have not pointed out to where these political gunshots have led to mayhem. Because among politicians, they know themselves. Do you think we take ourselves too seriously? We know what it is when you go on
the local
platform,
government elections. During the local government elections in your state, in Idorin, for example, we saw violence, and in other areas. So, if you say these statements don't lead to violence, I wonder, with the violence we have seen, what was responsible for that then?
I thank you. Said during the local government election, can you tell me, because you have to be specific, what statement led to that? That is it. What statement led to that?
So you're saying that the statements made by political actors, divisive statements that tend to make people go violent, you're saying they are not related to the violence we see before, maybe during elections too?
With all respect to you, I said, tell me what particular statement led to that. That's all. And I answer you.
So what's your basic... Understandable. I understand, Your Excellency. So you're saying that these statements should be allowed to be made if they can be linked to violence? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that there are statements, fake and false news, that could exacerbate whatever situation we have and that could lead to mayhem and violence. That should not be allowed. And I'm also now reiterating that most of these statements that they make on political platform, politicians understand themselves. They are not
the people, Your Excellency, do the people understand? Because this is a major issue. Do the people understand? Because if they hear a politician saying, well, we're going to win this election at all costs, regardless what happens, the people will go out there and try to win it at all costs.
The people don't do that. If you say you win election at all costs, they know you are just a joker, and most people will tell you and react almost immediately, you are a joker, you will not win. So if I say I will win at all costs, you too say you will be defeated at all costs, and everybody will be quiet. There's nothing, political statement like this, as I said to you, it's just tantrums. It's different from, don't compare this with what happened recently. It's not the same. People did not die. You say you have hundreds who have died. So what are we saying? Are they the same? Are you saying that reaction to the massacre of people is the same thing as saying election will be won at all costs? No, they're not the same. Please let us compartmentalize all these statements. As I said, those ones are political gunshot. You cannot kill anybody, and people don't react to it as such. But when it comes to what we saw recently, it's not an easy thing. You carry somebody that will happen in a film, and you now bring it out on the Facebook and say, oh, we are carrying a dead body. Until that person came, oh, this was not a dead body, we acted this film. Is it the same? Seeing dead body and saying this is somebody who was killed? I reacted to everybody will react. How can they be killing this way until you find out that nobody, not that people were wounded and co, but not that extent. Let us be fair to ourselves. So you don't link it up. Let's separate this from what happened recently. Political gunshots are nothing.
Well, a number of people would, hold their opinions on whatever side of the divide they would find themselves. But part of that resolution also included suggesting constitutional role for traditional rulers. Well, a number of people will also remember that that was the system we had, I think, before and even soon after independence. What happened at that time that made that change, and why is it necessary now?
Well, I mean, the suggestions, I mean, from our discussion, the traditional rulers have their constitutional role. I will mention it there. At least they sit on the Security Council of each state. Maybe just one. Maybe we need to increase the number. Those are the issues we are discussing. Maybe representing the Central District sit on the Security Council of each state. Now, others, maybe time has come. If, for instance, we're going to run the community police properly, then maybe, because even at local government, their Security Council too, traditional rulers sit on it. So they have constitutional rules on the issue of security. But there are many more that we can get them involved in.
Your Excellency, you also recall that one of the monarchs, the Ooni of Ife in particular, said that there's been a distance, a kind of gap between the institution of government and the traditional rulers, and he was asking for that gap to be closed. What was he talking about there?
What he was talking about was very simple, is that that was, with all respect to the Ooni of Ife, it was a general statement. It might not be what applies everywhere. There are some states in which the governors and co meet their obas almost every other month. There are some states like that. But what he was saying is that maybe it should be more or less like something that is protected or provided for by law, that, okay, there must be a meeting. And I'm not too sure everything will have to be provided for by law, that we want to call for a meeting of traditional rulers with their government or traditional rulers with the federal government. It doesn't have to be put in any law. It's not necessary. But it could now become a convention that, okay, there's a meeting of traditional council as they did with the president, and that is done quarterly. That's what Ooni of Ife was trying to address. Look, that we don't have to wait until any incident of this nature happens before we call the meeting. But I'm sure, with all respect to Kabezi, I cannot say that the meeting was being called for the first time when this thing happened, because I know that I've seen Obas go to Abuja, meet with the president before this time. So it might not be as frequent as expected. And that's what I believe the Ooni of Ife was trying to talk about. And let it be more frequent. Let it be at federal level. Let it be at state level. Meet with Obas as often as possible, because they are closer to their people. And I think all of us agree.
But, well, a lot of other issues were raised, but like you said, it's an ongoing conversation, so we'll definitely keep tabs on them. But another issue, which now is particularly regarding your state of Ondo, is the strike action. Resident doctors recently announced that they were going on strike. They raised some issues, and we saw lawyers protesting, and eventually they said, well, we're going on strike also. In fact, they said they had made representations to your government, tried to reach out, to no avail. So regarding the doctors and the lawyers, what's the update?
I don't see any problem in that. And I always one person who encourage any group who want to protest, It's their right. You have the right to protest. Go out. I will never send policemen at you. You want to stay there for 3, 4, 5 days, you are welcome. There's no problem. There is nothing wrong in protest. I have led protest before, so you can protest, you can be there. It has never moved me in any way. But all I know is that if you have channel to which you can have matters resolved, but if you choose to want to be on the street, so be it. So be it. There's no problem. If you look at the resident doctors in their own case, they were saying that, look, they wanted their salaries to be paid as you pay all the civil servants. And the held meetings, and it was said that that will commence from the month of October. And when I read that they are going to go on strike and go, and I said, but I asked the commissioners, I said, you brought papers to me here. There was an increase in our wage. And I asked you, said, because you have included resident doctors, their wages in the normal salaries we pay. And I said, why are they going on strike? He said they told them, but maybe they don't believe. By now that they have been paid the salaries like they paid other civil servants, they will go back. You know, at times you just want to enjoy it. Resident doctors, those are the ones who are in residency. They are in training. They are working with the teaching hospital. All other doctors are working. They are the ones in training. Assuming we decide to suspend the training, must we train them? But that is not the case. We need to be able, most times, understand. Because the teaching hospital itself used to pay from their grants. But they found out that, look, when their grants come late, so other civil servants have been paid before they get their own money. Their grants do come late, I agree. There's nothing we could do about it. So when they insisted, okay, put their salary with other mainstream civil servants and let them be paid as civil servants have been paid. So if there is delay, just like it happened all over the country this time around, if there is delay in paying salaries, so you now say because you are not being paid, you go on the street. There's no problem, you go. When your salary is paid, you go back. So I think they have been paid. When it comes to the issue of lawyers, they raised a few issues and I laughed. But for me, I know that it is most unfounded, most unnecessary. But since everybody now, without respect to the profession you belong to, you believe you can just go on the street and do whatever you like, there's no problem. Whatever issues they raise, I've asked the head of service and the Attorney General to look into it, and they'll come back to me. There's no problem.
Well, Your Excellency, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning and your thoughts, and wish you and your team all the best. Rotimi Akeredolu is Chairman, Southwest Governors Forum, as well as Governor of Ondo State. Thank you once again for your time and your thoughts.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.